The big picture, how God is fixing what's gone wrong. And the section we're reading today is called Sin and the Beginning of the War. There's several smaller subheadings. The first is number 13. Sin is self-centeredness. Every person who practices sin commits an act of rebellion, and sin is rebellion. 1 John 3:4. At its heart, sin is an attitude of rebellion, a way of thinking that considers first what is in the best interests of self, and then determines to act accordingly, no matter what. It does not willingly submit to any authority or surrender itself to another. It distrusts the motives and agendas of others, so it places supreme trust only in itself. It is the opposite of love, which does not think or act in the interest of self. A person who is infected with this rebellious attitude always thinks of himself first, putting his own interests above the interests of others. He acts to promote, advance, or bolster his own chosen agenda, often at the expense of others. He does not trust God to do what is best for him, believing, sometimes only subconsciously, that he knows the best course of action or the best outcome for any given situation. He refuses to submit to God's wisdom and God's timing, and often seeks to work out God's plan in his own way and in his own time. His primary goal is to take care of his own needs, no matter who or what he damages along the way. This obsession with self-seeking, self-interest, and self-exaltation is the fundamental problem with sin. It is a denial of creatureliness, a refusal to submit to God's authority, and an unwillingness to accept the things God offers. Instead, it is an attempt to be our own kind of God, answering to no one else, doing only what we think is right. If you have a hard time seeing what could be wrong with that, read the book of Judges. It's an account of the absolute worst era in Israel's history, characterized by the most awful acts of inhumanity, violence, and injustice. And through it all, this mantra is woven through. At that time in Israel, every person did what was right in their own eyes. 14. If God can win our trust, he can heal all the damage done by sin. He said to him, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced even if someone rises from the dead. Luke 16:31. The ultimate problem with sin is in its distrust of God. Instead of listening to what God says, we try to figure things out on our own. Instead of believing that what he says is true and what he does is good, we are invested in our own agendas and desired outcomes. The thing is, this can be so subtle. Many people who claim to know and love God and want to see his plans fulfilled in their lives often act in ways that reveal they don't really trust him. For instance, God promised Abraham that he would become the father of a great nation, but Abraham tried to fulfill the promise in his own way by fathering an heir with someone other than his wife. His actions proved that, in his heart, he didn't trust God fully. Ultimately, Abraham did learn to trust God, and once the trust had been restored, the relationship was healed, and centuries later, Jesus used Abraham as the example of righteousness in an odd story he told about two men, a rich man who died and went to hell, and Lazarus who died and went to heaven. The rich man begged Abraham to send Lazarus back from the dead to his family, but Abraham replied that even a resurrection wouldn't convince people who were hardened in rebellion. After Jesus told the story, he went and raised Lazarus from the dead to prove his point. The rebellious self-centeredness of sin has caused real damage to our relationship with God, but for most people it is not beyond repair. It is the unwillingness to listen that causes the ultimate problem. But if God can get our attention and restore our trust in him, then the relationship will be healed. That's the only solution to sin. It's simple, but it's not easy. 15. The disease of sin produces symptoms we call sins. But whoever has doubts is condemned if he eats, because the eating is not from faith. For whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. When you go to the doctor because you've had a high fever and vomiting for several hours, the doctor is not going to treat your high fever and vomiting. Those are only symptoms. You want the high fever and vomiting to stop because they are making you miserable, and the doctor probably wants them to stop too. But what he wants even more is to discover why you have a high fever and vomiting. Instead of just treating the symptoms, he wants to diagnose the problem so he can cure it. Because he knows that if he cures the problem, the symptoms will also disappear. Sin is like a disease, and it manifests in a great deal of symptoms, which we also refer to as sins. These are bad behaviors that cause harm to ourselves or others, but they are only symptoms of the real problem, which is our rebellious distrust of God. God isn't interested in treating our symptoms. He wants to cure our problem. He knows that if he can cure the problem, the symptoms will also disappear. Often we only care about correcting our bad behavior. But if our obsession with the symptoms interferes with God's treatment of the real problem, we are still in critical condition. In Romans 14, Paul lumps all of sin's symptoms together, from small things like white lies and eating unclean meat, to big things like murder and child abuse. Anything that is not done from a heart of trusting God, he says, is wrong. That means even if we only ever do good things, if they're done outside of a trusting relationship with God, they're sinful. Our real problem can never be cured as long as we're unwilling to listen to the doctor. We may run to him because our symptoms are causing distress, but we had better stay long enough to hear the diagnosis. For God isn't interested in weeding out our sins. He's interested in curing our sin. 16. Lucifer, an angel, became corrupted through self-seeking. I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, guardian cherub. Your heart became proud, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. Ezekiel 28:16 and 17. Believe it or not, sin didn't originate on this planet. It began in heaven with an angel named Lucifer. And Lucifer wasn't just any angel. He was the guardian cherub, the highest ranking angel in the heavenly courts, the one who spent much of his time in the very presence of God. But in the course of time, Lucifer became dissatisfied with his position. Although the Bible doesn't give us all the details, it says that Lucifer's heart became proud, that he fostered a self-centered obsession, and that this rebellion eventually corrupted him. Though created in perfection, Lucifer slowly became intent on becoming greater than God and raising his throne above God's, so he could ascend to the very highest place in the universe. At some point, Lucifer had gone too far in his rebellion to turn back. He was cast out of the heavenly courts, and Jesus himself said that he had witnessed Lucifer's selfish downfall. And although he still masquerades as an angel of light, Lucifer knows that far from ascending to the highest place in the universe, he has been brought down to the depths of the pit, as the Bible puts it. He now focuses all of his evil energies on hurting God as much as possible by damaging the rest of his creation. And 17, Lucifer's rebellion ignited war in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Revelation 12:9. You wouldn't think war could break out in a perfect place where everyone is perfect and everything is at peace and God himself is there. But that's exactly what happened. As Lucifer nurtured the rebellion in his heart, he couldn't keep it to himself. He began subtly circulating lies about God to the other angels, and casting doubt upon God's goodness until the whole thing fomented into open revolt. Lucifer managed to turn 1/3 of the angels against God, and when war broke out and maintaining the peace was no longer possible, Lucifer and his angels were cast out of heaven. That's when Lucifer became known as Satan, God's adversary. But just because he was no longer in heaven didn't mean his rebellion was over. After our world was created, Satan immediately began seeking to turn the human race against God as well. The opening pages of the Bible record how he appeared in the Garden of Eden as a serpent, seeking to cast doubt on God's own words and incite rebellion on our planet. Even at the very end, Revelation chapter 20 says, he'll still be at it, working to deceive the nations. Only when he is thrown into an abyss for a short time of total isolation will his deceptive activity cease. But once he is released, his murderous, rebellious heart will pick right back up where it left off. Every last ounce of energy he has will be spent in seeking to destroy God. Until his dying breath, he will never give up. He will never give in. He will never surrender. That's the nature of rebellion.